Hello my friends. So a little while ago I made a video where I ranked all of the Kanto gym leaders in card form based on their exact teams from Red and Blue. I decided to keep it simple and only compare the cards from base set, jungle, and fossil, basically starting from the beginning and pretending that the deck consists of only their team for Pokemon. I feel like this caused a little bit of confusion with me putting a focus on these being in a full deck. You would probably never make a deck with their exact teams, so I feel like I should have not worded it that way. Basically, all I was really doing there is comparing the gym leaders' cards to each other and placing them in a ranking. Do I think Staryu and Starmie are better than Geodude and Onix, for example? Nobody is making a deck with just one Geodude and one Onix unless it's for a horrible challenge. I still may go back and do the same thing with the Gym Heroes and Gym Challenge sets, but for now, I thought it would be fun to move on to the Johto gym leaders. Except there's one kind of annoying problem there. Most of the gym leaders don't even use actual Gen 2 Pokemon. So when I can, I will root the comparison in the cards from the 4 Neo sets because they were the card introductions for Gen 2, but some of these will have to be older cards because they don't exist in any Neo sets. I'll explain as I get to them and try to keep it as Neo official as possible. Also, there are some Pokemon that have multiple options, so I'll certainly mention them all and personally pick one I think best fits in with the other Pokemon. I will be ranking all 8 Johto gym leaders and then a separate ranking of the Elite Four. If you actually were to make a deck with these teams, you would have to include the unevolved forms as well, but I will not be discussing them in the rankings. Exact teams from Gold and Silver only. Also, yes, I am aware of the Pokemon Versus set that exists, which is basically the Gym Heroes Challenge equivalent to Gen 2. It was a Japan-only set, so I didn't really want to rank them based on that, but it is certainly an option for another video if the interest is there. For now, I wanted to stick with the Neo sets here. So, okay, let's do this. Number 8, Falkner. Yeah, probably not a surprise to anybody, but it's just how it goes with the first gym leaders. Falkner only uses Pidgey and Pidgeotto, so I see no reason to put him last. And right off the bat, there isn't a single Pidgey or Pidgeotto card in any of the 4 Neo sets. So I think it's best to go back to base set here. The only other Pidgey or Pidgeotto options that exist at this point are Koga's from Gym Challenge, so that doesn't feel right at all. So both are colorless with a weakness to lightning, resistance to fighting. Base Pidgey just isn't great. Whirlwind is its only attack, so it is constantly switching out the defending Pokemon every turn. Very tough to make any headway there, but you could also use it once to trap a different Pokemon in and then retreat Pidgey. Base Pidgeotto is a bit better as it's actually a rare. It has a stronger Whirlwind, but also the option for Mirror Move, which does the same damage back to the defending Pokemon that was dealt to Pidgeotto. It only has 60 HP, so it's not going to be dealing a ton of damage all the time. Falkner is the first gym, so naturally it's going to be a pretty low tier. Thus, this team is really not that exciting. At least a fighting deck would struggle against it, so that's something. Number 7, Whitney. Whitney infamously uses Clefairy and Miltank, both colorless types with a weakness to fighting, resistance to psychic. Makes sense as she's the normal gym. But hey, look at that, we now get into some Neo cards. Both Clefairy and Miltank are in Neo Genesis. This Clefairy has Double Slap, doing 10 damage for each heads on 2 flips, and then a move called Square Dance, which has you flip coins equal to the amount of Pokemon in play. For every heads, you bring a basic energy card from your deck to your hand. This Clefairy is very utility based, but could be a game changer. Double Slap won't be bringing much hurt, but Clefairy is all about energies. Unfortunately, that's a big reason why I have Whitney in 7th by factoring this in. You'll only have Clefairy and Miltank with this hypothetical team, so getting energies will almost never be an issue. A really cool card, not great for this pairing. But Miltank is the star of the show anyway. It has Milk Drink, which has you flip 2 coins, and for each heads, you remove 2 damage counters from Miltank. A nice chance self-heal move. And then it has Body Slam doing 20 and paralyzing with a heads flip. It's a pretty cool card with more of a defensive focus. Miltank is meant to be hanging around for a little while by paralyzing and self-healing. But alas, with a team of just these two, it will still likely be a struggle. Number 6, Bugsy. This is an interesting one to me. Bugsy uses Metapod, Kakuna, and Scyther, and at least with the base set, Metapod and Kakuna aren't bad cards, even though they're pretty bad Pokemon. But let's see what we get here. All are grass types weak to fire, with Scyther also having a fighting resistance. But here's the crazy part. Both Metapod and Kakuna have more HP than Scyther, and there are 2 Scyther options even. Neo Discovery Metapod has 70 HP and 2 moves, Harden and Hatch. Finally, no more Stiffen. Harden prevents damage done to Metapod on the next turn if the move hits for 20 or less. And unfortunately for a team of these 3, its other move is basically just a self-heal. Hatch heals Metapod and then has you search your deck for a Butterfree card to instantly evolve it, but only with a heads flip. No Butterfree here of course, so for this team it's just a 50-50 self-heal. Neo Discovery Kakuna is a bit better though. Same HP of 70, but it only has one move, Secrete Poison. Secrete Poison is if Kakuna is attacked on the next turn, that Pokemon becomes poisoned and then all of their benched Pokemon take 10 damage. This could scare your opponent to not even want to attack, so it's kind of a win-win. For the Scyther options, I kinda like the Neo Discovery version more. It has 60 HP and only one move. Fury Cutter does a set 10 damage, and then you flip 4 coins. For 1 heads, it does 10 more. For 2 heads, 20 more. 3 heads, 40 more. 4 heads, 80 more. A potential 90 damage move for only 2 grass is pretty sweet, although rare for that to even happen. Even still, you'll likely be doing 20 or even 30 damage each turn, which isn't bad at all. Not breaking down barriers or anything, but it's pretty decent. The other Scyther option has the same stats but 2 moves. Agility is the same as usual, dishing out 10 this time and preventing damage on the next turn 50% of the time. And then Sharp Sickle does a set 40. Definitely not bad at all, just a little more straightforward than the random Fury Cutter version. So yeah, Metapod here is defensive only, but there could be some fun with Kakuna or Scyther. Even still, Bugsy has to be pretty low. Number 5, Chuck. It's too bad that I gotta put Chuck this low, because I actually love his simple team of just Primeape and Poliwrath. But unfortunately this is another case where there is no Primeape in the Neo sets. There does exist the Southern Islands version and the Team Rocket and Gym Challenge version, but I still think it's best to go with the standard jungle one. Southern Islands is a side set, and then the others are specific to being Dark and Brock's versions, so those don't feel right either. Jungle Primeape has 70 HP, weak to Psychic with 2 moves. Fury Swipes does 20 for each heads on 3 flips, and then Tantrum does 50, and Primeape is confused with the Tails flip. It's really not a bad card, but it is reliant on coin flips and has a potential self-confusion. Neo Discovery Poliwrath is a fighting type, weak to Psychic, 90 HP and 2 moves. Corkscrew Punch does 30, Submission does 70, and Poliwrath takes 20 damage. Really nothing much to it, but I like that it helps for the theme that Poliwrath is a fighting type here. However, with the need for Mankey, Poliwag, and Poliwhirl here too, Chuck's deck would not be incredibly intimidating. Although the attacks can still dish out some damage, hence me putting Chuck above Bugsy, but just barely. At least they could both still do some damage against ones with a fighting resistance too. Number 4, Jasmine. Jasmine's deck would actually be kind of a fun one. She uses 2 Magnemite and 1 Steelix, which gives us the introduction to the Metal type. These sets were after my time, so I just now learned that it's called the Metal type and not Steel. Neo Discovery Magnemite is actually a rare too. It has 40 HP, weak to fire, resists grass, and there are 2 of them here. And its 2 moves are linked to each other. Electric Bolt takes a lightning energy, so Magnemite doesn't even use metal energies here. It does 50 damage and paralyzes, but only if 2 heads are flipped from 2 flips. But its other move is Lock On, which says any tails flipped on the next turn for Electric Bolt become heads. So really no reason to flip any coins. You can take the chance that 2 flips will be heads, or you can get a surefire hit from Electric Bolt every other turn. It's a pretty fun card, but Magnemite won't be lasting too long either. Steelix, however, is a monster. You'll have to have the fighting type Onix around to evolve it, but Steelix has a whopping 110 HP and 2 moves, also a huge retreat cost of 4. Tackle just does 20, nothing to it. Tail Crush does 30 with a tails flip, 50 with a heads flip. Yet Steelix is only about dealing damage and nothing more, but man, it will likely last a while, and 20, 30, or 50 damage is nothing to sneeze at. Hey, I just noticed this in editing that I completely forgot to mention the Neo Destiny Shining Steelix. I think it should still be mentioned as one of the Steelix options. This one is the Metal type, it has 90 HP, weakness to fire, resistance to grass. but it takes 2 metal and 2 fighting energies to use Crushing Earth. Crushing Earth does 80 damage, and then you flip a coin. If heads, it does 10 damage to every benched Pokemon, and if tails, it does nothing. And then it can't use the attack on the next turn. I think the other one is more accurate, but I at least wanted to mention this one. I like Jasmine's team, but it's just right in the middle for me. Number 3, Price. Price is one that takes a little customization for my ranking. He uses Seal, Dugong, and Piloswine. Neo Destiny Seal has 50 HP, weak to lightning, and 1 move. Takedown does 30, and Seal takes 10 damage, but it's pretty cheap. I kinda like it even for a self-damaging move. But the only Dugong option is Light Dugong from Neo Destiny, and I'm going to count that one. It has 80 HP, also weak to lightning, and 2 moves. Freezing Breath does 10, paralyzes with a heads flip, or causes sleep with a tails flip. Always causing a status condition gets points from me. Ice Pillar does 40, and then prevents all damage done to your benched Pokemon on the next turn, as long as Light Dugong stays active. That's kind of an interesting twist there. And then there are actually 2 Piloswine options of 2 different types too, Water and Fighting. The Water version from Neo Genesis has 80 HP, weak to grass, resists lightning, and has 2 moves. Freeze does 10 and paralyzes with a heads flip, and Blizzard is the lesser version of Fossil Articuno's. 30 damage, and then with a heads flip, all of your opponent's benched Pokemon take 10 damage, with a tails flip, all of yours do. The fighting version from Neo Revelation has more HP with 90, and the same grass weakness, lightning resistance, and also 2 moves. Nap heals Piloswine for up to 30 HP, High Speed Charge does a mighty 80 damage, Piloswine takes 30 damage, and then it can't use the move on the next turn. I like this one in that you're encouraged to heal up the 30 damage it took from High Speed Charge on the next turn. It is costly though. I personally think the Water version works better for the team to pair with Seal and Light Dugong, so I would opt for that one over this one. I do like that there are 2 type options though to utilize its Ice Ground typing. Number 2, Morty. Morty is a bit of a strange gym leader, as since Gen 2 introduced the brand new ghost type of Misdreavus, Morty sticks to the standard Gen 1 ghost with 4 Pokemon of the evolution cycle. He uses 1 Ghastly, 2 Haunter, 1 Gengar. And with that said, it would still be a pretty strong team compared to the others. As for the ghosts, none of them have any weakness and they all resist fighting. Neo Destiny Ghastly is extremely basic, 40 HP and Nightmare does 10 with Auto Sleep. That's it. But then we get spooky. The versions of Haunter and Gengar are dark versions, also from Neo Destiny. Morty uses 2 Haunter, so there are 2 usable Dark Haunter here. It has 50 HP and 2 moves. Callback is a strange one. You bring back a baby or basic Pokemon in your opponent's discard pile onto their bench, and it gets 1 damage counter. No wonder this is the dark version, my god. It literally brings back a discarded baby just to be injured. Relax, my guy. And then Surround does 20 damage, and with a heads flip, the defending Pokemon is asleep. With a tails flip, it can't retreat on the next turn. I don't know if I love this one, but it could be useful against the right deck. Surround seems to help trap a Pokemon in play. And that leaves 1 Dark Gengar who has 70 HP, a Pokemon Power, and 1 move. Its Pokemon Power of Deep Sleep means if either player has a Pokemon that is asleep, they need 2 heads on 2 coin flips to wake up. And its move of Pull-In does 30 damage and gives you the option of a Gust of Wind action here by bringing a benched one in after, and then it is asleep. Paired with its Pokemon Power, Dark Gengar is actually quite scary, and why I have Morty at number 2. I kinda love Dark Gengar, what good fun. But a problem Morty could encounter is being against any Pokemon with a Psychic Resistance. You are very likely going to struggle with these lower damaging moves. I debated on having Price at second, but ultimately I still went with Morty. I could see either way. And number 1 is of course Claire, the final gym leader. Claire uses 3 Dragonair and 1 Kingdra, yikes. The only Dragonair option is Light Dragonair from Neo Destiny. It is the colorless type with 80 HP, no weakness, resists Psychic, and has 2 moves. Healing Light heals your entire team for 1 damage counter each. Awesome. Protective Wave does 20, and then with a heads flip, Light Dragonair is protected from any damage or effects on the next turn. It is not super strong or anything, but very defensive based with a lot of HP, a full team heal, and won't even be hit 50% of the time if you use Protective Wave. And yeah, 3 of these guys. Plus the need for only Dratini to be around first. And then there's the lone Kingdra with 2 options, plus the need for Horsey and Seadra out first. Neogenesis Kingdra is a water type with 90 HP, no weakness or resistance, and has 2 moves. Agility is the standard here. 30 damage, Kingdra is protected from damage and effects on the next turn with a heads flip, just like with Light Dragon Air. And then Dragon Tornado does 50 damage and has a forced gust of wind ability to bring in a benched one afterwards, unless Dragon Tornado knocks it out. Yeah, this Kingdra is pretty beastly. The Neo Revelation version is even better in my opinion though. It's the same water type, 90 HP, no weakness or resistance. Genetic Memory allows it to use any move that Horsey or Seadra had that Kingdra evolved from for only 1 colorless energy. That's honestly really sweet. Depending on which cards you use, this Kingdra could have 5 move options, if you don't count Genetic Memory as one of them. Love it. Then it has Twister, which is a bit risky. It does 50, however, you flip 2 coins. With 2 heads, you also choose 2 energy cards on the defending Pokemon to discard. Obviously the ideal option. With 1 heads, you choose 1 to discard, and then if both are tails, you don't even deal the damage and the turn ends. Really, it seems like a really fun card to use, and in my opinion, the number 1 spot here has to be Claire. Not really a huge surprise, as she is the final gym leader who uses dragons though. On to the Elite Four rankings, and we have some spicy ones here. These were also really tough to rank too. They all use 5 Pokemon, and I think would make for some pretty sweet teams, all 4 of them. But here's what I went with. Number 4, Will. Of each of the Johto Elite Four members, Will is the only one who uses doubles. His team consists of 2 Xatu, and then Exeggutor, Slowbro, and Jinx. And luckily there are actually 2 Xatu options, so let's include one of each. Neogenesis Xatu is a Psychic type with 80 HP, weak to Psychic, resists fighting, and has 2 moves. Prophecy allows you to rearrange the top 3 cards of either player's deck in any way. Then its other move is Confuse Ray, doing 30 and confusing with a heads flip. Nothing we haven't seen before. This is actually a lot like Fossil Hypno even. Just switch out Dark Mind with Confuse Ray. And take away 10 HP. And add a fighting resistance. Okay, you know what I mean. Neo Discovery Xatu has everything the exact same except for 70 HP. It has Energy Cycle, which is, with a heads flip, you move an energy on the defending Pokemon to another one of your choice. Kinda cool actually. Its other move is the return of Super Psy, doing a simple 50 damage. I think between the two, I like this one a little more, but 1 each should be in the deck, plus 2 Natu of course. Then we have Neo Destiny Dark Exeggutor, a 60 HP Psychic type with a weakness to Psychic. It has triple Headbutt, doing 10 damage for each heads on 3 flips. And then Max Burst, max in all caps so you know it's serious. This does 20 damage for each heads with the coin flips equaling energies on the defending Pokemon. So this one is only coin flip reliant. Not great, but the key is that both moves are very cheap to use, so Dark Exeggutor has some use. And on the flip side to the Dark and Brooding Exeggutor, there is Light Slowbro from Neo Destiny. It's a Psychic type with 80 HP, weak to Psychic. Fish Out allows both players to bring back 3 Pokemon in their discard pile to their deck. Kinda strange to call that Fish Out, but alright. And its other move actually takes water energies. Splash About does 40 damage, but only if the defending Pokemon has more energies on it than Light Slowbro. Otherwise, it does 20 damage. In my opinion, this is the weak point of the deck, but it is also beefy enough to be taking some hits too. And finally, we have Neo Revelation Jinx, the lone water type here. It has 60 HP, weak to Psychic. Freezing Kiss Goodnight is a simple auto-sleep move with a water energy, and then Strange Dance takes Psychic energies, pretty much making this a 2-type team. It does 40 damage and confuses with a heads flip, only 20 damage with a tails flip. This deck is certainly pretty good, but among the Elite Four ones, I do think Will is probably the least threatening. Psychic Water does seem to work pretty well, although all of them are weak to Psychic, even the Water-type Jinx. Nobody here is really a powerhouse, just consistently decent. Also, everyone here only needs to evolve once, except for Jinx. Number 3, Bruno. In contrasting Will's evolution pattern, Bruno is the exact opposite. All are basic Pokemon except for one. He uses each of Hitmontop, Hitmonchan, and Hitmonlee, and then Onix and Machamp. A pure fighting deck with everyone weak to Psychic except for Onyx, who is weak to Grass. All pretty simple. All of the Hitmons also have 60 HP and 2 moves, so it's basically just comparing the moves here. Neo Discovery Hitmontop has Detect, which prevents all damage and effects on the next turn with a heads flip, and then Triple Kick does 30 damage for each heads on 3 flips. Yeah, some potential for 90 damage, but also always the possibility of 0. Hitmonchan has Dodge, which prevents only damage, not effects, during your opponent's turn if a heads is flipped. And then Supersonic Jab does a simple 40 damage. Hitmonlee has 1-2 Kick, which does 20 damage for each heads on 2 flips, and then Heal Drop, which does a mighty 60 damage, but only if a heads is flipped. Like usual, I think Hitmonchan is the best of the 3. For their main move, Hitmonchan is the safe bet, Hitmonlee is more all or nothing, and Hitmontop has the potential for the most damage, but the hardest to achieve. Kind of a neat little balance there. And then there's Neo Genesis Onyx, with 60 HP and 2 moves. Screech increases your attack on the next turn by 20 damage, doesn't even have to be from Onyx. It's basically like adding 2 plus powers on your following turn. Kinda cool. Enrage is how it usually works, 10 damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on Onyx. And finally we have the only evolved form here. Light Machamp from Neo Destiny has a mighty 100 HP, 1 move, and a Pokemon power. Tag Team allows you to heal your active Pokemon for 30 damage, but only if Light Machamp was played onto your bench. Then Light Machamp becomes active. A neat little twist there that could disrupt some strategies. And its only move is Beatdown, which does 50 damage unless the defending Pokemon is of the Darkness type or has Dark in its name, in which it does 100 damage if a heads is flipped. The ultimate destroyer of darkness here, which is obviously situational. Even still, Light Machamp is doing 50 damage and potentially healing your active Pokemon too. I like it. I think overall, I like Will's Pokemon just slightly better, but I gave the edge to Bruno because it can't be understated that most of his are basic Mons, ready to go at any time. To me, that's a huge advantage over Will, and even still, most of these aren't bad at all. Number 2, Koga. The returning gym leader from Kanto, Koga actually gets a lot of options for his Pokemon here. He uses Ariados, Forretress, Muck, Venomoth, and Crobat. 3 of these having regular Neo cards, plus a Dark version. Let's discuss all options. Also, for the sake of repetition, all of these are Grass types except for one option for Forretress, who is the Metal type. Neo Genesis Ariados has 60 HP, weak to fire, and 2 moves. Spiderweb stops the defending Pokemon from retreating with a heads flip. Poison Bite does 20, auto poisons, and then heals Ariados for half the damage dealt. Pretty awesome, really. Dark Ariados from Neo Destiny has the same 60 HP and fire weakness. It has Entangle, which works like a gust of wind, bringing a benched one in with the bonus of also paralyzing them with a heads flip. Love it. Poison Bind does 30, auto poisons, and with a heads flip, that Pokemon can't retreat on the next turn while also preventing any moves or effects that help them retreat. Awesome. I for sure give the edge to Dark Ariados here. I love that these Pokemon that I usually don't care about typically have cards that I love, like Arbok. Neo Discovery Forretress is the Metal type with 80 HP, weak to fire, resists grass, has 1 move, and a Pokemon power. Lots going on there. Spikes hits the defending Pokemon for 10 if it becomes the active Pokemon from the bench on your opponent's turn, unless Forretress has a status condition. Pretty awesome bonus there. Rapid Spin does 30, and then afterwards, both players choose a benched Pokemon to bring in, helping to make Spikes even stronger. I like this one a lot, although for this team, it would be the only one using Metal energies, so it may not be ideal. But there is also Dark Forretress from Neo Destiny. It has 60 HP, weak to fire. Armor Up helps you save Dark Forretress from being knocked out until the end of your next turn with a heads flip. It stays in play with 10 HP left, kinda like the Sturdy ability that they create in the main games. And then we see the return of the fan favorite, Explosion, doing 60 damage, and Dark Forretress takes 60 damage. But wait a minute, that paired with Armor Up is pretty sweet. If they are unable to knock out Dark Forretress, you could potentially keep blowing it up on repeat, dishing out 60 each turn for only 2 grass energies. But the likely case is that they will eventually be able to hit it for 10 and knock it out. Even still, this is a fun one to plan around. The downside is that Explosion is its only damage dealing move. So I don't know which one I would pick here. I kinda like the metal one more, but the grass one would make more sense for this team. I think I will still pick the metal version. And here is where I'm choosing to make another substitution. There is no Muck from any of the Neo sets, but instead of picking the old fossil version, I remembered that this here is Koga, and there exists Koga's Muck from the Gym Challenge set. I feel like it has to be this one. Koga's Muck has 80 HP, weak to Psychic, 1 move, and a Pokemon power. Energy Drain says that if Koga's Muck is dealt damage, that Pokemon discards an energy card on it if a heads is flipped, also unless Koga's Muck has a status condition. Yeah, pretty scary stuff. And its only move is Sludge Whirlpool, dishing out a simple 40 damage. Pretty disgusting. Light Venomoth from Neo Destiny has 80 HP, weak to fire, resists fighting. And here's an interesting thing. It has a grass move and a psychic move. I don't know why, but it's like they always wanted Venomoth, Psyduck, and Golduck to be psychic types, but they just aren't. Mysterious Wing has both players bring a Pokemon from their discard pile to their hand. And then the psychic move of Synchronize does 40, but only if the defending Pokemon has the same amount of energies as Light Venomoth. Yeah, this is an iffy one, but it's still a pretty cheap move for 40 damage if you can pull it off. And finally, there are two versions of Crobat. Neo Revelation Crobat has 90 damage. Nope. Neo Revelation Crobat has 90 HP, weak to Psychic, resists fighting. Triggered Poison does 20, and then, if your opponent attaches an energy on the next turn, that Pokemon is poisoned. Kind of a cool take on poisoning. And then Cross Attack does 20 damage for each heads on 4 flips, and if 2 of them are heads, it also confuses them. This Crobat isn't bad at all, but understandably, as you need both Zubat and Golbat out first. And Dark Crobat from Neo Destiny has 70 HP, weak to Psychic, resists fighting. It has the Pokemon power of Surprise Bite, which allows you to deal 20 damage to any of your opponent's Pokemon when you play Dark Crobat. Awesome. And Dark Drain has you flip a coin for each of your opponent's Pokemon, and they take 10 damage for each heads, and Dark Crobat gets healed for the damage that was dealt. I like this one a lot, actually. Tough call on which Crobat should be used, but that basically shows how many options Koga has here, which helps me place him at number 2. I think I like the Dark Crobat version just a little more. The downside is that all of them are evolved forms, with Crobat being a 3rd stage, but I just really like how this team would look overall. And number 1, Karen. In my opinion, Karen's team outlasts all of them. She uses Umbreon, Vileplume, Murkrow, Gengar, and Houndoom. And just like with Koga, lots of options here among 3 different card types. There are actually 2 versions of Umbreon in Neo Discovery too. Number 13 is the Darkness type, has 80 HP, no weakness, resists Psychic. It has Bite doing 20 damage, and then Feint Attack has you deal 30 damage to any of your opponent's Pokemon, ignoring any weakness or resistance. Simple and effective. Number 32 has everything the same but 10 less HP. Quick Attack does 10 damage with a Tails Flip, 30 with a Heads Flip. And then Pursuit does 30 damage, plus 10 more if your opponent tries to retreat that Pokemon on the next turn. Also pretty sweet, but I think I like the other one just slightly more. Also, both artworks are pretty fantastic. Yeah, I love Umbreon. But now we've reached another non-Neomon. There is no Vileplume among any of the Neo sets, but rather than choose the jungle version for this, Karen is the Dark type master, so to me it makes much more sense to choose Dark Vileplume here. It's a grass type with 60 HP, weak to fire. It has the Pokemon power of Hay Fever, which prevents any trainer cards from being played unless Dark Vileplume has a status condition. Kind of a game changer right there. And then Petal Whirlwind does 30 damage for each heads on 3 flips. If you get 2 or 3 heads flips, Dark Vileplume becomes confused. Yeah, this one is beastly. If your deck focuses less on trainer cards, you could just store a Dark Vileplume on your bench and pretty much kill your opponent's game plan. Next are 2 Murkrow options. Neo Genesis Murkrow is the Darkness type with 50 HP, no weakness, resists Psychic. Mean Look stops the defending Pokemon from retreating if Murkrow stays active, and then Feint Attack is a lesser version of Umbreon's. It does 20 to any Pokemon of your choice. Dang, they made Murkrow pretty good, and this one is a rare. Neo Revelation Murkrow is a common though. It's the same darkness type, no weakness, resists psychic, and has 40 HP. Call for Family has you bring another Murkrow from your deck to your bench, and then Flock Attack does 10 damage, plus 10 more for each heads with the flips equal to the amount of Murkrow on your bench. Yeah, sorry, I gotta go with the Neo Genesis version for this team. Dark Gengar is one I already talked about from Morty's team. It would be the only psychic type here, so that goes into consideration. But it's just a good card with the deep sleep power, and then Poland. Again, already talked about it. And finally, for the first time in this entire video, there are 3 options for Houndoom among 3 different Neo sets. Neo Discovery Houndoom is a darkness type with 70 HP, no weakness, resists psychic. Crunch does 30 damage, and then if you damage that Pokemon on the next turn, 20 more damage is added on. And then it uses fire energies for Flamethrower, doing a simple 50 damage, and then you discard a fire energy. I feel like you could get by pretty well just using Crunch here, but Flamethrower is another powerful option if you have fire energies to spare too. Neo Revelation Houndoom has everything the same. Dark Flame has the fire attack here doing 20 damage, and then you discard a fire energy. Afterwards, you can attach a darkness energy from your discard pile onto Houndoom. And then Black Fang does 30 damage plus 10 more for each heads with the coin flips equaling the amount of darkness energies on Houndoom. And our very last card to discuss here is Neo Destiny Dark Houndoom, who is a fire type instead of a darkness type. Kinda funny since dark is in its name. It has 60 HP and a weakness to water. Eerie Howl has you look at your opponent's hand. If they have any baby or basic Pokemon there, you choose one to now become active, and their current active one goes to the bench. I think this is a fun one because you don't really know if this will help or hurt you, but it's a pretty unique move. And then Dark Fire does 30 damage, and then if you discard a darkness energy on Dark Houndoom, it does 20 more damage, plus 10 more for the discarded energy. Dark Houndoom doesn't even use darkness energies, so they would only be on it for discarding, unless you were saving them for the colorless ones. It's a fun one, but I think this is still my least favorite of the 3, at least for this team. I think I gotta go with Neo Revelation Houndoom here. So combining all of these into one solid team, I think Karen's goes unmatched. Literally only Dark Vileplume has a weakness, and it's to fire, while the darkness ones all resist psychic, which is pretty huge. Murkrow is the only basic one here, so that could be a ding, but man, even the Murkrow card is pretty good. I think this is the best Johto team you could have out of everybody. So yeah, there are my thoughts on the Johto gym leaders, comparing them by their cards from the intro Neo sets. It does kinda suck that not all the Pokemon can be represented from the Gen 2 sets, but it really wasn't that many. I also like how the new types of Metal and Darkness are also represented here for some more variety. I no longer collected the Pokemon cards when these sets came out, so I've never really actually seen them before. But is this a good video idea? Should I do more of these with the different sets? Like I said, I could also compare them by the Pokemon Versus set. I could compare them by their rematch teams from Heart Gold or Soul Silver too. Or I could go back and do that with Gen 1, do the Gym Heroes Gym Challenge sets, or just move on to Gen 3. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll determine what I want this little side series to even be. Many Neo-sized thanks to my Patreon friends here. It's so cool that you've stayed with me all this time, or even for a short time. It's all wonderfully appreciated. If you want to scope out some Paraspectre logo merch too, give my Bonfire store a look-see, and I'll see you all for some more Pokemon TCG nonsense. Paraspectre will return.